It's finally ban list season, so today I'm going to bring you my predictions and wish list for the March 2025 Yu-Gi-Oh! Ban list. How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk all about ban lists. I'm going to give you my predictions, my wish list for the ban list in March 2025. Now, we don't actually know if there's going to be a ban list, but everyone's doing their ban list videos, and I figured that I might as well jump on that train. Now, everyone has an opinion on what bans there should or shouldn't be, so let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are on the list. But also, make sure to be respectful of everyone involved. Be respectful to the people making the videos, but also to the people commenting down below. We're all part of the same community. Don't be an asshole. If you guys are excited for the video, do me a favor and smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But with that being said, here is my wish list and predictions for the March 2025 Yu-Gi-Oh! Ban list. Whenever I do some prep for a ban list prediction video, I always go ahead and take a look at the top meta decks in the format. I want to make sure that these decks are going to be hit in some capacity, not to the point where they get completely decimated, but to the point where they are reduced in power just a little bit to give other decks the chance to shine. That goes for both new and old strategies. That being said, the best decks in the format today are going to be Ryzeal, they're going to be Maliss, we're going to have the Fiendsmith variant, and even then there's Blue Eyes Primite. And of these strategies, in my opinion, Blue Eyes Primite is the only one that should come out of this ban list untouched. Now, while in my opinion those are the best decks in the format, there are other strategies that I do believe should have some hits against them in this current format. Now, the first card I really want to talk about is a card that has been banned in the OCG already, and a lot of people are calling for it to be banned here as well in the TCG. That's going to be Abyss Dweller. This card is insanely powerful. It's a rank 4, which means it's incredibly easy to make in a deck like Ryzeal. On top of that, it's easily able to be taken advantage of in a deck like Mermail Atlantean, and the deck has been performing very well, winning, I believe it was YCS Rio, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, this card is incredibly powerful, and it shuts off so many different strategies in the game. However, it wasn't actually banned when we were in tier limits format, and because of that, it doesn't make a lot of sense for it to be banned right now. In my opinion, yes, I think it's finally time for Abyss Dweller to actually leave the format. It's an incredibly powerful card, lingering effects just really are not that healthy for the game, and unfortunately I think Abyss Dweller has just reached its time where it's just too strong of a card, and shutting off the graveyard is way too powerful, especially considering it's so easy and generic to make. The next card I want to talk about is going to be Ryzeal, which is, in my opinion, the best main deck card in the entire Ryzeal deck. The card is phenomenal. It's only about 3 months old right now and has been dominating in the format today. If you're playing Ryzeal, you always want to see Ryzeal or a way to it in your hand. The card is just that incredible. Additionally, because the card is able to send to grave cards like Myriologic Aggregator or Eclipse Twins, it allows the Ryzeal deck to get extra interruption or grind game that it wouldn't normally have. And while it's a phenomenal card, I don't think it's going to be limited on this list. I think it's just way too new. I would not be surprised if Konami just said, you know what, let's put this card to 2, and that's where I think it's going to end up going. Ryzeal rather, to semi-limited status means that you can still see the card quite often because you still have Bonfire in the format, you still have, of course, the 2 copies of Ryzeal, you still have 7th Tachyon, but it just means that you're not going to be able to use it as often, and you always have to be recycling it back into the deck with Ryzeal Cross. I think that this hit makes a lot of sense, and it's a decent hit for Ryzeal overall. But here's the thing, are these 2 hits to Ryzeal going to be good enough to reduce the power of the deck significantly? In my opinion, not at all. Ryzeal needs more of a hit than just X to 2 and Abyss Dweller ban to actually be a fair and balanced deck. And in my opinion, the way that hit's going to come is actually going to be in putting Ryzeal Detonator to 1 copy. Yes, you might be thinking I am crazy and this is a terrible hit, and hey, that is just my opinion that Ryzeal Detonator should go to 1. This card here is incredibly powerful. It is the way that Ryzeal is able to have an insanely powerful end board. It's able to get access to a multiple different amount of pops. It's able to revive back cards to attach to it as material like Eclipse Twins or Aggregator to reuse their effects over and over again. This card, most of the time, you're ending on 1 copy of it only, so it's not going to hurt the end board to the deck, but it's going to hurt the recursion of it. And this is going to make it so that you have to use Ryzeal Cross to bring back the Detonator if you can't get it recycled back with some other ways. And here's the thing, by putting Ryzeal Detonator to 1 and Ryzeal to 2, is the deck dead? Absolutely not. The deck is still going to be one of, if not the best decks in the format, because the deck is so incredibly powerful as is and can take advantage of some of the best cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! That being said though, we're actually not done hitting Ryzeal, and that's because of some business decisions that Konami has made by releasing 7th Tachyon into the same format that Ryzeal is in. For those of you who don't know, 7th Tachyon is a card that essentially allows any Xyz based strategy to add any monster from their deck to their hand, depending on what cards they're playing in their extra deck. That being said, because 7th Tachyon can add cards like Ryzeal, Ryzeal, or whatever Ryzeal monster you really want, you can go ahead and say, you know what, Bonfire, it's time to go to 1 copy. Now, Bonfire going to 1 is solely because I believe they're going to use it to sell copies of Maze of the Master and make sure that 7th Tachyon gets sold as much as possible. That is why. It's a business decision alone. In my opinion, I think that limiting X-Ryzeal rather, and Ryzeal Detonator are going to be enough to really reduce the power level of this strategy, but putting Bonfire to 1 copy along with 3 copies of 7th Tachyon makes it so that you essentially have still 6 copies of X-Ryzeal in your strategy and 7 copies of all the other Ryzeal monsters you want to see. And that's a lot of hits for Ryzeal. That's 4 hits that are kind of directly aimed at Ryzeal in a way. I mean, 2 of them are more accurately focused on Ryzeal being X and Detonator, but Bonfire is being a bit more generic but being mostly abused in Ryzeal, and Abyss Dweller is just a card that is way too unhealthy and should be going in my opinion. That being said, that's all the hits I have for Ryzeal. Let's go ahead and move on to our hits for Maliss, which is the other top tier deck in the format in my opinion. Now, hitting Maliss is a bit more complicated than dealing with Ryzeal. Even though both these strategies are very new, the reason why Maliss is a bit harder to hit is because the deck itself relies heavily on a lot of one-ofs in the strategy to make use of its powerful end board. For example, if you wanted to limit all the Maliss Link monsters, that's not really going to do anything because they play all of them at 1 copy anyways. And you can't just ban them right off the gate because they're way too new. Additionally, the Maliss main deck monsters aren't really going to matter that much because at the current moment, there's only 3 of them and you really only play 8 copies total, and when Alliance Insight comes out, we get a brand new one as well, so none of those really actually make much sense to hit. So where I do believe you have to hit Maliss is going to be in the generic end board and cyber support that this strategy can take advantage of. Lingering floodgates are a very big problem in Yu-Gi-Oh! Today, and it's for that reason that I believe that Nightmare Griffin should be banned. Nightmare Griffin is a very toxic card, and it was only a matter of time until this card would be taken advantage of to its fullest potential, and that's kind of what's happening now. Maliss decks are forgoing the traditional end board and going for an end board with a Baoku and a Nightmare Griffin to lock the opponent out of the game, filled with a ton of different board breakers, and not board breakers, but trap cards rather, that are going to be interrupting them, hand traps, and additional ways to rebuild their own board. In my opinion, Nightmare Griffin is way too unhealthy and definitely should be banned. And even then, it's being used for its on-field effect as a floodgate, but it's also able to recycle trap cards and spell cards as well, which is going to be one of the other reasons why this card is a problem. And Nightmare Griffin is also a light fiend monster, so you can technically go through full Fiendsmith combo as well, which is just insanely powerful. It's not the only hit I want to give to Maliss. In my opinion, there's one more hit that actually must be done that we have to ban to make sure that Maliss is not going to be a major problem when Alliance Insight gets released. And that card is actually Link Decoder. Link Decoder is incredibly powerful, being a Link 1, and when have you not heard that? Any Link 1 is just primed to be absolutely taken advantage of and made broken at any point in time, depending on what Konami's releases are going to be. And Link Decoder is exactly that for Maliss. Link Decoder is incredibly powerful because you can simply link off a Maliss monster, banish one with a Bestial, bring it back with its effect, and you have 3 bodies on the field to make a 2300 attack point Link monster, which means you can then bring back Link Decoder as well. Without Link Decoder, it makes it so it's a lot harder to get access to a ton of extra Link material on your side of the field, and for that reason I think that Link Decoder should be hit. It doesn't kill Maliss, but it makes it so that its combos have to have a few more extenders to really resolve to what they want it to be. And in my opinion, with these 2 hits, the Maliss endboard is going to be significantly weakened. But again, we can't just hit these 2 cards and that's it when it comes to Maliss. Maliss has a ton of room for non-engine, and one of the best non-engine cards in the game right now are going to be the Bestials, and currently the only one limited is Magnamut. And in a format like Master Duel, we see almost all of them limited to 1 copy, and in my opinion, that's a bit too extreme. I wouldn't go that far, but I do believe a card like Bestial Drua's Worm has reached its time to go to 1 copy. This card is incredibly powerful, being a Bestial monster makes it already strong enough, but the fact that if it's sent to the graveyard from the field, it's able to send a card to the graveyard as well, which is an amazing piece of interruption as well. So essentially, it's going to be an extender for you that also acts as interruption on the Maliss side, but additionally, it's just a phenomenal card as well. And in my opinion, Yu-Gi-Oh! Should have good Bestial monsters in the format, but they shouldn't all have to be insanely powerful like Magnamut and Drua's Worm. They should be able to take advantage of something like Baldrake, for example, which is a great card in its own right. It's just not seeing as much play right now because you can play 3 copies of Drua's Worm instead. If you want to say that Drua's Worm is a direct hit to Maliss, then so be it. I think that it reduces the power level of the deck and makes it rely on other extenders, which to me is fine. That's 3 hits to Maliss. I think this is more than enough to make the deck a lot more balanced in the current format. Up next, we're going to talk about the Fiendsmith engine, which is arguably the best engine in the game today. It's been out since the Infinite Forbidden, which has been about, what, 7-8 months now, and the deck is just incredibly powerful, and the engine can be splashed into pretty much anything you want. In my opinion, the biggest problem for this engine is going to be that it's so easily splashed in pretty much anything, but the bigger issue is actually going to be the end board. In my opinion, a card like DDD Wave High King Caesar is a very big problem and to me should be banned. This card is ridiculously strong. The fact that it is pretty much generic to make nowadays because everyone that's making it is using the Fiendsmith cards, and the Fiendsmith cards are good for other things as well, and it gets you 2 special summon negates is ridiculously good. Additionally, it's a massive body and it helps you play around Nibiru. Nib is just an insanely powerful card as well this format, but it's completely shut down by a card like Caesar. And we've seen cards like Barone and Appaloosa get banned because they can deal with an early Nibiru as well. And the fact that Caesar can essentially protect themselves from Nibiru but also deal with board breakers or starters that your opponent might have is way too strong. In my opinion, Caesar is the reason why the Fiendsmith engine is as strong as it's going to be. If you got rid of Caesar alone, the Fiendsmith engine would be a lot more manageable, but still a big threat. But what about the actual Fiendsmith cards? Well, in my opinion, the Fiendsmith cards are some of the most generic and powerful cards in the game today, and there are also 2 cards that have the potential to be hit on this ban list. The first of which is going to be Fiendsmith Engraver, and the second is Fiendsmith Tract. If you want to ban Fiendsmith Requiem, then the deck just dies, and I don't think they want to do that just yet because it hasn't been reprinted. So I want to make sure that the deck is still playable, the engine is still good, just not as high powered. I think that Fiendsmith Engraver should definitely be hit, and in my opinion, it should be put to 2 copies. Again, a consistency hit, but that's what I think that Konami is going to end up doing with this card. I don't think they're going to put it to 1 copy just yet because the card is very good, but only works at its best when it's put to 2 copies or more. If it's at 1, you really rely heavily on Necroquip Princess, which is fine, but again, I think the card is so much better when it's played at 2 or more copies. Now again, this doesn't get rid of the engine itself, and it doesn't make the engine that much weaker because instead of playing the 3rd copy of Fiendsmith Engraver, they just play additional copies of Fiendsmith Tract. So for that reason, I'm putting Fiendsmith Tract also to 1 copy. Fiendsmith Tract is a card that essentially gets you full Fiendsmith combo without using your normal summon, which is incredibly strong. It does play into draw a little bit, but if your deck doesn't really care about it that much, then it's not that big of a deal. So that's 10 cards on the list, and they're all basically directly pointed at 3 of the top meta decks in the format, which is kind of saying something. And I do have quite a few other cards I want to talk about. So that being said, we're going to move on to our next category, which is essentially going to be for Mermail. Mermail Atlantean is an incredible deck that can play through so many different pieces of interruption. The only things it can't really play through that well are going to be Droll and Lockbird, Dimension Shifter, and Abyss Dweller, and Abyss Dwellers are going to be banned in this format. So we have to have a way to actually hit that strategy. And in my opinion, there are multiple different cards you can look at when hitting Mermail, but what is the right one? For example, you can hit something like Atlantean Dragoons, you can hit the Totally Awesome, you can hit Bahamut Shark, you can hit Moulin Glacia, Deep Sea Minstrel, you can hit so many different cards in the game. However, I think only 2 cards need to be hit to make sure that Mermail does not become way too toxic. And the first card is going to be Moulin Glacia. This card is incredibly powerful, basically being a rip 2 out of the opponent's hand. That alone is incredibly strong because it's so easily accessed. The issue is not every single Mermail deck is actually playing Moulin Glacia. The ones that are take advantage of it, the ones that aren't build an insane endboard and hand rip the opponent through other means. To make sure that Mermail doesn't devolve into becoming this type of control deck and that just rips cards out of the opponent's hand, I think Moulin Glacia has to go. And the other card that has to go in my opinion is easily Deep Sea Minstrel. This card is ridiculously good. The fact that Deep Sea Minstrel has 2 incredible effects for Mermail is ridiculous. One of them is not healthy at all, and that's why I think it should go. Number 1, it's that for cost, it sends a water from hand to graveyard along with itself to be able to look at your hand and then rip a card out of it until the end phase. So not only do they get to look at your hand and get full information, but they can also get rid of the card that is the most threatening to them at that current moment. Additionally, they get to trigger all their Mermail and Atlantean monsters, which makes it such an amazing starter too. Additionally, if it's special summon, they can mill 3 cards and summon back a level 4 monster or lower, which is a big deal because they can summon out Bahamut Shark and then trigger other effects over and over again. This card is way too strong, and the fact that I think it was a common when it was released means it's going to be a lot more likely that this card gets hit compared to other options in the game. So that's all the hits I have to the main meta decks, but I do have other strategies that I do believe should be hit in some way or another. The first card I want to hit that isn't really part of a given archetype or strategy in the top tier meta decks is going to be Catapult Turtle. I think Catapult Turtle should be banned. Right now, if you saw my video from Thursday, then you'll know that I think Catapult Turtle is insanely unhealthy because of the Tachyon or Galaxy Eyes FTK. Without Catapult Turtle, they can't really do the FTK at all, and it's also searchable through 7th Tachyon. The card is insanely powerful because of what it allows FTK strategies to do, and they should just ban this card before it gets too problematic. That being said, that's all I have for bans. This is 7 banned cards, and 5 of them are water monsters, which is crazy to think about, but let me know what you guys think about the bans down in the comments below. Moving on though to our limits. There's only one more card that I want to bring from unlimited status down to limited, and that card is more of a personal gripe that I have, but it is definitely something that I see Konami doing. I believe they're going to go ahead and limit Dimension Shifter. I think Shifter going to 1 is finally going to happen. I've been hoping that it's going to happen for a long time, but this is the first time I can actually see it making sense for them. It's just a card that is way too powerful, too oppressive, and Konami would do something like putting it to 1, because that way you can still see it and draw your Saki 1 of, but you have to draw it in the first turn of the game, or it really doesn't do too much. That being said, if you do end up drawing Shifter in the right deck, it could completely ruin the game for your opponents. I think that Shifter should have some representation still, at least from Konami's vision, but I think it should be put to 1 because it's way too oppressive of a card in the current formats. But that's it for cards that are now new to the ban list. In my opinion, this is all you really need to have. I know it's a lot, but it is still pretty important that you do hit these strategies before they get too out of hand, like Mermail, like the Tachyon FDK, for example. But let's talk about cards that are now going to be unlimited from the list. The first card I think is going to be brought from 0 to 1 copy is going to be Prank Kids Meow Meow Moo. Prank Kids is not going to do anything in the format. I've been calling for this card to come back forever. Yes, Link 1s are problematic, but if you replace one Link 1 on the list with the other Link 1 up here in the ban section, then I think it kind of evens itself out, don't you? That being said, Meow Meow Moo is a great card. It's great in Prank Kids, but it's not really going to see much play because Prank Kids is nowhere near as powerful now as it once was. The next card I believe should go to 1 copy is going to be Summon Sorceress. This card was banned a long time ago, but has since received an errata, and the card is now kind of unplayable. I mean, it's fine still, technically, but it's really not going to be as abusable, so for that reason I think that Summon Sorceress should go back down to 1 copy. And the last card that's going to be in the limited section is going to be none other than Masterpiece, the True Draco Slaying King. I think it's time. You can bring Masterpiece back to 1 copy. It's going to be okay. Yes, we have PTSD about this card. It is insanely strong and a really broken card, but at this point in time, it's been banned for what, like 7 years or something? The card can come back, I mean, and it's going to be a phenomenal card in the decks that play it, but it loses to so many other cards in the format that it shouldn't be that big of a concern. And finally, for the unlimits. The unlimits are going to be pretty straightforward. I believe we're taking Cyberjar and moving it from 2 to 3 copies. I think the card has done its time on the list. It went from, I think, 0 to 1, then 1 to 2, and now it's going to be going to 3 copies in my opinion. Additionally, I think that Monkey Board is also a card that can go back to 3 copies. The card is fine. It's not too broken. It's a good card, don't get me wrong, but Pendulums just aren't really going to be doing that much, especially in a format with Ryzeal and Maliss running around. So yeah, Monkey Board can go to 3 copies in my opinion. And the last card that I think is going to go to 3 copies is actually going to be Ava. I think Ava can come back to 3 copies. The decks that were taking advantage of it right now weren't really seeing much play, and at 2 copies, it's still not seeing much play, so I think it can come back to 3 pretty safely. But that's it. This is my ban list, and I believe it's a pretty good list. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments below, and let me know what your suggestions are to improve the list as well. Now keep in mind, everyone has different opinions. I've seen so many people on so many different ban list videos, old and new, that have just basically berated the person making the list video, and you don't realize something. This is our opinion. This is our opinion for what Konami is going to do, our predictions for what they're going to do, and our opinion for what is needed to help the game. If you have any difference of opinions, let me know. We'll have a respectful discussion down in the comments below, and I'd love to hear and have those conversations with you guys. So those are my predictions. If you guys enjoyed the video, again, do me a favor and leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let me know down in the comments what other future videos you want to see from me on this channel. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.